The streets were empty, bathed in the eerie glow of flickering streetlights. Midnight had long passed, and Officer Sarah Martinez was counting down the minutes until the end of her shift. The silence of the city at this hour was something she usually found comforting. Tonight, it felt different. She spotted him near the edge of the park, a small figure, barely visible under the dim yellow light, walking barefoot along the cracked sidewalk. He couldn't have been older than 10, wearing a faded hoodie that hung off his thin frame, his hair sticking up in wild tufts. Sarah slowed her patrol car, heart tightening as she rolled down the window. "Hey, kid," she called softly. "What are you doing out here?" The boy stopped, staring at her with wide, frightened eyes. His small chest rose and fell rapidly, his hands gripping the frayed edges of his sleeves. "They're coming," he whispered. Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Who's coming?" He took a step closer, his voice barely audible. "The monster's at home." She parked and stepped out, approaching him carefully. The boy flinched when she reached out, and she knew that flinch too well. "Hey, it's okay," she said gently. "You're safe now? What's your name?" The boy hesitated before murmuring, "Ethan?" His eyes darted nervously down the street, as if expecting someone, or something, to appear from the shadows. Sarah knelt down to his level, her heart breaking as she noticed the bruises peeking from beneath his sleeves. "Ethan, can you tell me what happened?" she asked softly. His lips trembled and his eyes filled with tears. "I ran away. I couldn't stay there anymore." Sarah's jaw tightened. She didn't need to ask. She led him to the back seat of her squad car, wrapping a spare blanket around his small shoulders. As they drove to the station, Ethan spoke in quiet bursts. "Mom gets mad a lot," he said, his voice hollow. "And Dad, he hurts me when she's mad at him." Sarah gripped the wheel, forcing herself to stay calm. The words cut too deep, dragging her back to a time she had long buried. The long nights hiding under her bed, the sound of breaking glass, the whispers of apologies that never meant anything. She glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You did the right thing running. I'm proud of you." Ethan didn't respond. He just hugged the blanket tighter. At the station, she sat with him in a quiet room, offering him a cup of hot chocolate. He clung to it like it was the only warmth he'd felt in a long time. Detective Jones sat across from Sarah, flipping through Ethan's file with a weary sigh. "CPS has been to their place before," he said. "Neglect, verbal abuse complaints, but nothing ever stuck." Sarah clenched her fists. "And now?" Jones sighed, rubbing his temple. "We'll place him in temporary custody, but without physical evidence." Sarah didn't need him to finish. She had seen it happen before. The system was flawed, overworked, stretched too thin. And kids like Ethan, they slipped through the cracks all the time. Ethan tugged at her sleeve as Jones left the room. "Are you going to send me back?" His voice wavered, eyes desperate. "Please don't make me go back." Sarah swallowed the lump in her throat, forcing a smile. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure you're safe, okay?" He nodded slowly, but she could see the doubt behind his eyes. He had heard those words before. Sarah sat in her patrol car later that night, staring at the moonlit streets. Her radio crackled with routine calls, but she wasn't listening. Her mind was still in that room, with Ethan, with the bruises he tried to hide. She thought about her own childhood, the years spent trying to forget, to move on, to pretend none of it had ever happened. And now, here was this boy, standing at the same crossroads she once did. She wouldn't let him slip through the cracks. Days passed. Sarah checked in on Ethan every chance she got. The shelter had placed him in a temporary foster home, but the court hearing loomed closer. She had spent every spare moment pulling reports, gathering testimonies, trying to build a case strong enough to keep him away from his parents. And then the call came. The judge ruled in favor of reunification. Ethan's parents had agreed to counseling, and CPS deemed it an improvement. Sarah felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The day Ethan was sent home, Sarah stood by her patrol car, watching as he climbed into the back seat of a social worker's car. He didn't cry, he didn't beg. He just stared at her through the window, his small face void of any hope. Sarah raised a hand in a wave, but Ethan didn't wave back. The car pulled away, disappearing down the road, leaving her standing there, feeling helpless. Weeks passed. She patrolled the same streets, but something inside her felt broken. Late one night, a familiar figure appeared on the sidewalk. Ethan. He stood in the shadows, his face pale and scared, looking smaller than ever. Sarah stopped the car and rolled down the window. "Ethan?" He didn't say anything, just reached into his pocket and pulled out something, a note. She took it, unfolding the crumpled paper with trembling hands. "They said I can't leave again. Please help me." Sarah's grip tightened on the paper, tears stinging her eyes. She picked up the radio and called it in. This time, she wouldn't let the system fail him.